Good to see everybody. My name is Hamsa Dahar. I'm the Executive Director of the Small Giants community. We have the full Small Giants team with us as well. So if you could do a little wave, we have Annie, we have Sarah, we have Jillian and Tia. And of course, Paul, who is the co-founder of the Small Giants community, who will be moderating today's conversation, and you'll meet him in just a second. Just to let you know, this is a casual conversation. It's highly interactive. We love to see you. So if you're on video and can turn on the camera, we would love to see you. And of course, we want to encourage questions, sharing of best practices and insights. So please utilize the chat feature throughout this conversation. There'll be plenty of opportunities to take your questions in. And for those that submitted the questions in the registration, we have those as well. And we'll be submitting those to the panelists, and they'll be sharing their experiences throughout this conversation. The panel is 1 hour. And so that's the part where we're all going to be together. And then we are going to break out from 2 to 2:30 Eastern time. And that's when we'll go into a couple of small breakouts to just have deeper conversations, maybe talk through some of the challenges that you're all experiencing to this topic, and continue to share best practices. So we'll do that in the latter 30 minutes of today's conversation. Sound good? All right, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hamza. Welcome, everybody. Great to see you. Whether you are familiar with the Small Giants community or new to the community, we are happy to have you. We are especially thankful to have Bob Glazer and Javon McCormick with us today, kind of as panelists to help talk about the experiences with their companies, which are kind of completely opposite sides of the spectrum. So this is going to be really interesting. So this topic that we've got today, we're all experiencing, high turnover, not able to retain people. Things are just so strange, and we're all trying to figure out how can we manage through this. Is this a trend, or is this the way it's going to be from now on? So strange that I am out here in California for the last few weeks, spending the summer. Our daughter, who's 19, decided she wanted to get her first job, and other than babysitting. So she decides that she wants to get a job in like retail or restaurant for the summer out here. And so based on how hard I know it is to get work, I wanted to caution her about entering the job market. I said, you need to know that you're going to see a lot of rejection, and you're going to be reaching out, you're going to be emailing, calling people. Nobody's going to call you back. And it's just okay. I was already trying to protect her ego. So she goes, Dad, I got it. She emails 4 different places the same day. She's got 4 offers. No one had to meet her. They said, when can you start? And I'd love to say it's because she's a wonderful girl, which she is, but it's because they're desperate, right? And you go around town here and people, it's just like they'll take you and they're paying lots of money. So she ended up getting a good job and is enjoying that. But gosh, that wouldn't have happened a year ago or anything like that. So let's talk about what's going on. And again, use the chat, throw questions in there. We're going to be after a few minutes with our guests, we're going to take questions from you guys, and let's end up hopefully in a spot where you feel like you got some really practical tips that you can use. So Bob, I want to start with you. Bob Glazer, he's a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's the CEO of Acceleration Partners, which is an affiliate marketing company. They have been a Forbes Small Giant recognized company. He's spoken at our conference, so a good friend of the community. Bob, as I think you've said, the idea that people are going to leave is inevitable, but managing through that is really what's difficult. And a lot of times we get surprised. People giving 2 weeks notice, people just deciding I'm done and moving on. So some of that is just going to happen. How can we better manage through it? Talk a little bit about, the company, how you guys work, how many employees, so we get a sense of the lay of the land and how you guys are dealing with all this.
Yeah, we have about 230 employees in 7 countries. About 80% of those are in the U.S. And again, we're seeing different things in different areas. I think as the U.S. is ahead in vaccination and reopening, there's an acceleration here that may happen elsewhere. We will definitely have as you mentioned, look, we focus a lot on our culture. We've won 20 Best Places to Work awards. We are all also in digital marketing and client service agency, which tends to be a higher turnover area. I think historically we're in about the 10 to 15% turnover rate as we've gotten bigger, which is the right rate, I think, in terms of people move on. I don't think zero would work in our industry, just in terms of where we want to be too. But yeah, we will probably break record this year. And in our industry, I wouldn't be surprised if people are looking at 30 or 40% turnover. So we've always tried to have something we call mindful transition. We now call it our career transition program, to have people have upfront and honest situations. 2 weeks. We've done them at like 2 weeks as a client service business. 2 weeks notice is like devastating to us. Like the difference between having 2 weeks and 4 and 5 weeks and be able to move someone into that account and plan ahead is huge. And we have created all the psychological safety in the world to have these conversations. We've done this for years. We pay people for extended notice. So you talk about like where you want your incentives. Like the more notice they give, we give them a bonus. So I think we've made it really clear that like, if you want to have this discussion, we're willing to have it. I think a lot of people, particularly I will say on the younger side, just aren't willing to have that conversation, and maybe not mature enough to start that conversation, or have been told by their parents and all this stuff that this is just how you do it. And look, you're lucky if you get 2 weeks these days with some people. I think that's the outside window that companies are probably seeing. So yeah, it's been, we've been doing some real debriefs and interviews, and it's kind of 3 buckets, I would say. And I know we'll get into like the hiring, which is equally as bad. There's probably been 15% wage inflation in our industry in the last 6 months. So we're a services business. We're open book. Our margins are about 15 to 20%. And our labor is 90% of our costs. So we've always been honest with people. Like, look, if we went, everyone wants more money. Like, we wouldn't give everyone 20% raise. We'd be like losing money. Like you can see it. Like it's right. We think our margins are very like in the right place of being sustainable and protecting without being egregious. When you talk about services, I think 40% margin gets very high. 10%, if you ever run a 10% services business, you are running real close to the vest. I see Javon nodding on that. But I would say through all of our discussions and interviews and exit interviews, I'd say there's 3 buckets. There's people who are just getting thrown insane amounts of money at them in a hot industry. Like we are one of the places that trains talent in our industry. So they're going to do something, I would say, similar for more money. Again, a lot of them, it's just, hey, if you look at I'm looking at their resumes before they came in. You're talking to people in their 20s. It's 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. And they're like, it was great. I loved it. You did everything right. It's been 2 years. Like, it's almost like it's an interesting dialogue. So a third in that bucket, a third in the, and this is the one that sort of frustrates me the most, but a third in the, this has just been a hard year. And they actually think that just going somewhere different is going to erase the memory of the last year. I think we were really good to people. We were super transparent. I'm not saying we did anything well, but I think we were like pretty good partners during a pretty difficult time to a lot of our employees. We had some furloughs. We did not have any mass layoffs or anything like that. But it just seems like, it's easier for, people are associating the difficulty of working through a pandemic with whatever they were doing at that time. So they just believe that they want change, and that will be and easier. Like I hear it'll be easier, which I just don't believe, because I think every recruiter is promising people all kinds of stuff and everyone's shorthanded and all that stuff. And then the third bucket is actually like, I just want to do something fundamentally different after this last year. Like, I want to go teach. It's not about the money. It's not, I just decided in this last year that I'm not living my sort of true calling. And so each of those we have to manage a little bit differently. Like we can't just play the wage game and say, we're just going to raise everyone, 20% and on the market side and too. So we are trying to, have those discussions, see where people are, the things that we can fix, we can fix, like always focus on retention. But I mean, there's one person who's leaving is just like literally like, she's like, last couple of years, I just want 100% career path change. And so the best thing that we can do in those situations is get as much dialogue and as much notice as possible. And you know, what I said to my leadership team on our call last week was like, this is kind of like a really bloody war. Like in talking to everyone in our industry and how everyone's the same thing and everyone's looking to switch. And I always feel like you look at the problem for the solution. And I did an onboarding class of new people last week, and we had a ton of people who were at companies that treated them pretty crappy, like during the last year. And actually they felt not supported, and they were so excited to be here. And we were able to leverage, you know, our brand and our culture to get all the other people who want to move around for some of the right and the wrong reasons. So I've tried to get the team very focused on like, look, we need to win the war of attrition. Like there's only so much I think that we can stop it. I think we can, again, make it a great place to work, do all the things that people want, focus on retention. But if people want entire career changes and to get out of marketing, it's hard to, no amount of retention is going to change that. And again, as you get to a size, when we start to get to 200 people, you just have certain, you know, law of numbers that I think come into play where, you know, 5 or 10% lift is, you know, 30 or 40 people. So it's the number 1, 2, and 3 issue we talk about. We actually have a great private equity partner. They said today they had hired a partner for their private equity firm through a search, was supposed to start next week, reneged, took a different job. Like it's just, it's crazy. I would say our people are getting called like 3 and 4 times a week by recruiters across the board. And some have no interest in leaving, but you know, enough people take those calls and someone promises them something that, you know, sounds really good. So it is a little bloody out there right now. And I think if you have a great culture, I think you know, at some point it is an opportunity to, how do you win everyone wanting to retrade? And with a lot of people, frankly, and, you know, the people that we get and keep are the ones that have been in a bad culture or a bad environment, or like, look, I've seen that, I'm not going back. A lot of the people that are leaving, I think, you know, have worked for the last 6 years and, you know, with out of school, and we haven't seen a downturn or anything like that, or what that looks like. So I can tell, like, again, when I did that onboarding, I was like, wow, you know, we're talking all about the people going out the door, but these people coming in are super happy to be here. And you can really see their enthusiasm. So that's what's going on. But again, it is the number 1, 2, and 3 thing that we talk about every week on our leadership team calls.
One follow-up question for you, Bob, because you talked about conversations and even paying people more to give greater notice and all that. So the kind of dialogue you're talking about, is this dialogue that's happening reactively to someone who has told you that they are thinking about leaving, or they give you that initial notice? Or are you having dialogue with the entire company proactively to set yourself up for the expectation that, for right or wrong reasons, people are going to leave, and we'd like to be able to manage it as best as possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's both. And it's tricky. We try to push this into manager check-ins and dialogues. And because, you know, to keep repeating that message at the company level, we're asking people to leave. So we talk about it a lot and when it's important to us. But we say, look, this is part of our promise. We've said we don't fire people and ask them to leave or pay them 2 weeks notice. In return for that, we really would not like 2 weeks notice. It's kind of like, you know, not a part of our culture. It's not part of good standing. Like, if you know you're starting to look and think, have a discussion with your manager. But yeah, the best discussions are not after the fact. They are to get someone to say, you know what, I think I want to do something different. And we can sit down and say, okay, let's talk about a timetable on that and what that might look like. And we have made a vow and a commitment never to walk anyone to the door who, you know, started one of these discussions around how what would leaving look like? Because again, we say it all the time. We recognize that people are going to leave. We don't want them to, but we've been trying to change how people leave organizations. Because I don't think the candidates realize, and again, we had a brief down market. I don't really like, they, you know, when you're someone trained you and mentored you and did all of this stuff, and it's a small world, and then you give 2 weeks notice, it leaves a very bitter taste in their mouth. And when someone back channels to them 3 years from now, and they say, hey, what about Hamza? And you're like, well, you know, it's that last memory is very powerful. So trying to even help the candidates to understand and say, look, we can be helpful to you in the future. Like we don't threaten, but we're just kind of authentic. Like it's going to be very hard for us to get behind someone who kind of broke one of our core principles because they just didn't want to have the conversation. I mean, our number one core value is own it. And we actually find that most of the people who had a little bit of a warning sign around own it are the people who generally give 2 weeks notice.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, hopefully their parents aren't the ones that are giving them this idea that it's okay to do that. Let's bring Javon into the dialogue.
Well, let me just comment one thing on that. I think they are, but again, I think they're probably telling them the truth from the playbook that they knew, right? In terms of like, this is what you do because otherwise you get screwed. But like we have gone out to the company 100 times, but like we have put so many proof points of that, like this is safe to do. So I do think they are being told by people, yeah, don't buy that. Take care of yourself. Like, yeah.
Times have changed for sure.
Yeah.
So Javon, let's jump in with you. You know, Javon's a great success story, made a ton of money in the stock market, but didn't go to college, was the president of a software company, didn't code. Now the CEO of Scribe Media, a publishing company, and I guess doesn't even know how to spell. But look at him now, you know, just doing great things, based in Austin. And so Javon has a different side of the story, which is that they've had their best year ever during COVID. They haven't lost any people. So what are you doing right?
So full transparency. So Bob and I know each other. I've known Bob for years. Love Bob. I can actually say that. Oh, I love Bob.
Even though I don't return as a text, apparently.
That is my guy. So you're going to see us take pop shots at each other. Him throwing out his 20 years best places. But he won't bring up that we were named the #1 company culture in America by Entrepreneur Magazine. He's not going to talk about that. So, but anyway, I got love for Bob. What we did different, and I'm going to push back to start this. I refuse to use the word retain. And I know that's a popular word in business. I know that's a popular word in corporate America, but go look at the definition of retain. To continue to have, to keep in possession of. Nobody wants to be retained. And I just find it to be an outdated word, and words matter. And so we won't, Bob and I are both big on culture, our company is led by culture first. March 2020, when the virus hit, I made the announcement that we would not lay anyone off due to the virus. So we didn't have any furloughs. We didn't lay anybody off. And it was a bold move. You know, we're a luxury good. People pay us $40,000, $120,000 to do their book. And it was a bold move, not knowing what the economy was going to do. But we ended up actually outgrowing our expanded office space. And I Monday signed an extension to take over another 13,000 square feet. So we'll have about 25,000 square feet of office space when everyone else is looking to consolidate. What we've done different, I believe, is a lot of companies are scrambling right now on what to do. How does this supposed to look now? How does this work from home? What's the dynamics? Is it Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Is it what does it look like? We've always operated from a place of, if you perform in your role, drive results, uphold the values. I don't care if you're here in Austin on Town Lake at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday paddleboarding on the lake. Great. Are you driving results? Are you performing in your role, upholding the values? No one cares if you come in at 8 and leave at 9. No one cares if you come in at 11 and leave at 2. Most people come in on Mondays because that's when we have the great majority of our meetings, but there's no micromanagement. It's a dynamic culture. Most of the people, Bob's got 230, we're pushing 100 people now. Any given day, you can find 60 to 70 people in the office, and they're all here voluntarily. We don't tell people to come to the office, but the culture brings them into the office. And real quick, Bob, I lied to you earlier when I said we didn't lose anybody. Twice a year during an all hands, I will make the announcement that if anyone is, for whatever reason, does not matter at all, is not happy in their career, I never want someone in the company that has to say, thank God it's Friday, because if you've got to trade 2 for 5, you're in the wrong place. And so I made the announcement, if anyone's unhappy, Slack me by 6 o'clock, we'll pay 4 weeks severance, and I'll write a letter of recommendation. I'll help you find your next career. We had one person take us up on that, Bob. And oddly enough, you know who it was? It was a marketer. So the same problems that you're having, it was someone in marketing.
Yeah.
And they took me up on it. But that's the only person that we had exit the company, and it was on good terms. You know, we paid the 4 week severance and wish this individual all the best. But that's what I would say we've done different, is we were set up from the start to where we didn't have to pivot, figure this out. What do we do? How's it work? The culture's always been set up this way to where people are happy in their careers.
You know, you guys are in industries that have, you know, had ups and downs, but have survived generally during this time. What about those industries that, like the hospitality industry, the restaurant industry, those that just, you know, where the bottom dropped out, and you're going to have this inevitable retention issue? Any kind of practical suggestions for those types of companies?
I mean, it seems like for now it's not a retention issue. It is they can't. I mean, I haven't been to a hospitality or restaurant that has enough staff these days to the story about your daughter. Yeah, I think look, there may be a little more repairing of reputation to do in those industries where, again, revenue was zero and you had to take action for the survival of the business. But yeah, I think right, the pendulum has just swung. It's just been a weird year. Like a year ago, it was all like no one had enough business, and now no one has enough people. And it's almost the complete opposite problem, and you're managing to totally different circumstances. So yeah.
Javon, are you finding it that this solid culture, and both of you obviously have that, you're both recognized best places to work, and so clearly the message is, with a great culture and a history of treating people well and transparency within the organization, you're in a much better position to weather whatever storm comes your way, and you're more likely to retain and hire great people. But the reality of what's happening now, whether it's the economy or, Javon, in your case, you know, just took a bunch more space. How are you recruiting? How are you standing out over competition, especially in a place like Austin?
You know, a big driver for us, like you said, it's the culture. We even our what we call our culture Bible. It's public facing. Anyone can go and read it. You don't have to get hired here to then understand what our culture is. You can read all of our principles and values long before you come into the company. Why that's important for us is, think about this. All of us have probably done this. You've gone to work for a company, and you didn't know what they actually stood for until you started with the company. Well, with us, we want you to know who we are before you get here. So it's a public-facing culture doc. People can put comments on it, and it tells you exactly who we are. We have examples of how this principle stands out, how it's going in action. So we want you to know who we are before you get here. That's helped us. To Bob's point, one of the big things that has stood out to us during hiring, I have never, I'll be 50 this year. In my entire career, I have never heard diversity asked about so much in an interview. And I will openly tell you, it does not hurt that I'm half white, half black, and have a very diverse background story, if you will. That's very much helped us, and it's played a big part in the hiring force, because our culture, the fact that I am mixed race, all of those things have led to people being attracted to the company and wanting to be a part of this.
Yeah, I love the fact that we're talking about things that we weren't really talking about before, and the whole social justice movement, the whole diversity movement has got a big push, and And I like that. I like that we're talking about that, and that's helping you. What about just this other topics that have come up? Mental health, for example, has that become part of the culture of your companies, where you're maybe more open about employees' mental health, those kinds of issues? So that also helps retain, because we're now not just talking about people's work life, but we're talking about their life overall.
Bob, you mind if I jump that one first?
Go for it.
So for us, another part of our culture is whole self. I've said this out loud many times, and I apologize for my language. Work-life balance is bullshit. We all have a life. We have to work. We have bills to pay. We want, retirement, all those things. So we want to support the whole person. And I'll give you an example of this. We all know that a lot of people in our country carry a ton of debt. And one of our tribe members, we call ourselves a tribe, one of our tribe members came to me and said, hey, my wife and I are looking to have children and we want to buy a home, but I'm $30,000 in debt. What do I do? And I sat down with him and we developed a plan that he was out of debt in 9 months. Why that's important in talking mental health, because we all know when you carry a lot of debt, that is mentally unhealthy, is we want people who can come into work and discuss some of the things they may be going through. We have single parents here who have gone through divorce. We have people who have a ton of student loan debt. We have people who have credit card debt. So we want people to feel that they have a place where they can go in, discuss those issues, bring their whole self. And I promise you, with 100 people, there's someone in here who have faced some of those challenges that can walk people through those issues. We have people here who have now, I don't like the term, but have come out and openly admit that they're gay now. We have people that can support that. We have people within the organization, like I said, that have faced race issues in the past. Two of our newer tribe members, 2 Black women, we had a Zoom call and they wore their scarves, their head wraps on the Zoom call. And they feared they were going to get fired, because where they came from in corporate America, that was a big no-no. And I expressed to both of them, no, be you, do what you do. And so all of those things, to your point, it's great to be able to talk about them now. I refuse to, and I say this respectfully, no one can use the words DE and I. The reason why we shorten it is because it's hard to say diversity, because we know what we're talking about. So we say diversity. What are we talking about? As it's going right now in our country, you say diversity. Most cases, people are talking about people of color. Okay, well then let's talk about people of color. So we're very open about this. We've got a tribe member that wanted to start using pronouns. Great, put it on your email. Teach me, how does that go? How do you want me to address that situation? Educate me, bring me up to speed. So all of those things lend itself to the whole self of the tribe members. We don't want you to try to separate work, life, all those different things. We all have one life. And so come in, we'll support you in every way we can, to the best of our ability and to what you want to open up to. We're not mandating you come in and, hey, I'm going to tell you everything's going on. Whatever you want to share, we're here to assist you any way we can.
I love that. I love the whole self approach. And I want to encourage folks to please ask questions, raise your hand. If you have a best practice, we're all ears. We're just listening and learning from each other. And we'll share some of those questions. I have one real quickly for Bob, because you talked about this unique way that you're trying to, through transparency, get people to give more notice and maybe even pay people to give more notice. You're in a very competitive market to get new talent in terms of hiring. Are you paying people to come on board as well?
Yeah, I mean, the market has moved, and we talk about this daily, and there's also financial implications on this. Look, salary compression is one of the most damaging things to an organization. Historically, I've seen that. You start bringing in some mediocre talent that's paid more than your good talent at the same level. what I found is that everyone in their 20s and 30s these days, it's just more common. They just talk about their compensation and everything. It's open. Like we can tell because people ask for an increase and someone asks for the same thing 5 minutes later, right? So that is very damaging. And so, but there's a temporary force in the market. So how do you explain that? So yeah, we're being smart about, we're actually using like high amounts of referral bonuses to try to get more compensation to our employees. We've doubled and tripled those while getting the people in that we need, and they're posting all over LinkedIn. We're doing, you know, maybe a one-time sign-in bonus or a 6-month retention bonus or something. But, you know, this sort of transitory pressure sometimes blows up and goes the other way. We saw this a year ago, right? And you got to be careful not to shift your entire cost basis on a fixed basis and then watch it go the other way. So we're trying to put more variable programs into place. Like we're trying to, again, be competitive, but also, you know, and talking to our investors too around what they've seen, that like, you know, these things, when you get these kind of, look at lumber, you know, 2 months ago, when lumber was $1,300 break, and now it's down to $450, right? I mean, when you have massive prices move, like you tend to have a re-correction. So, it is really, really, really hard to get out of salary compression decisions that you make when you bring in mediocre people at a higher price than your better people. So there's not a good answer to this, and it's complicated, but we are trying to do the best. We're trying to tie as much incentive, and I think that's the problem in a hot market. We say, look, if you're just worried about making the most money, someone's going to pay you more. Like we try to align everyone to our incentives. You know, we have equity programs, we have goals. Like again, referrals are the thing we need the most these days. So you can make a lot of money making referrals. We're trying to get people focused on, you know, where can they do better, helping us with the core economic engine. Because look, we all, one of the pillars, like we all believe in running profitable businesses, right? That's why a year ago we didn't have to make horrible decisions, because we were operating from a point of sustainability. And that, I know that's lost on people now, where they're like, you know, we were like, why can't you just pay us more? And like, remember how we were safe last year because we were smart around this? Again, the people that are paying more now are the companies that laid off 20 to 30% of the people. I think the short memories on some of this stuff is tough. And I just want to flag one thing Scott said in the chat, because I think is really true too. It is that fourth bucket. And I think for Javon and I, we just don't have this issue because we have this flexibility. I 100% agree with him. I hate the term work-life balance. I like work-life integration. You want to have good work and you want to have good life, and you want them to work together well. But you're going to have weeks that require more work and weeks that require more life, and trying to think that it's like a seesaw and balance is just going to upset you. But there's so many companies out there that have not declared their return to work strategy, and all their employees are deciding whether they want to stay or quit. And I think they're hedging, trying to not piss off everyone. Like, decide what you want to be, lose the people that don't want your offering, and get the people that want your offering. By not communicating what you're doing, the data is pretty clear. I just saw McKinsey said that 40% of companies have not communicated their return to work strategy, and the other 30% have been so opaque that employees don't know what it means. So you might actually have a bunch of people that aren't coming back. Like, they've already moved. They live on a farm in Vermont, and you just don't know that they're not coming. Like, trying to not piss off everyone by hedging is probably going to cause more gain. So that is also going to be a really, I think, big bucket for people of, you know, do they want the value prop that your company's going back to?
Yeah. A lot of
Paul,
yeah, go ahead.
Real fast on what Bob said as well. And you know, I said this before we jumped on. You know, the biggest challenge for us is we can't hire fast enough. We literally cannot hire people fast enough. And a big challenge of that is, again, we're in Austin. You had so many people move to Austin, and wages are inflated because you got a lot of tech industry, you got a lot of VC, private equity here, and they just throw money to everyone. It has slowed us down, but one thing that we do, we actually put what the salary is for every role that we're hiring. You know, you'll read these career descriptions where it'll say amazing environment, and it'll tell you all about it, competitive salary. Define competitive. So we just put the salary on there, and we know that people have probably looked this over because nope, not enough. I'm going to go somewhere else. That's just there's no right or wrong. You're making a decision at this point. And then, and the other part to Bob's piece to this, one thing that we have stuck to and will not waver from, everything for us is transparent. So once a month, we post the income statement. You see how much money came into the company. You see what the expenses are. You see what payroll is. And we're transparent on every salary. You can see what I'm making. You can see what he just walked by. You can see what Matt's making. And so we're very transparent. That way, we believe you eliminate a little bit of the water cooler talk and who's making what, but it's out there. And I know there's pluses and minuses, but so much of business, as Bob knows and you all know, it's not right or wrong. You're just making a decision that's best for your organization.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage to do that as well. Hamza, I think we have one or two questions that have come in for you.
Yeah, we have Fatima, if you could unmute yourself, go ahead and jump in.
Oh, thank you.
There you
I
go.
had a question regarding the incentive of trying to get employees to give a 2-week notice. What are some of the conditions that you have around that? My fear is if we do bring that on board, individuals will feel like they can, be lazy, lash out, be like, hey, I'm getting paid to leave. But, by giving this notice in time, how do you deal with that? Do you put some sort of conditions into place so you could be like, hey, if you finish off these 2 weeks, and you do great and you advise and so on and so forth, then you get the incentive? How do you work with that? As this is the first time for me ever hearing a company doing this.
Yeah, I'll try to make a long answer short. So I think the normal 2-week notice scenario gets to a point where there's already toxicity and trust broken and all kinds of things are not recoverable, which is why a lot of people have such a problem with this concept, because they're like, at this point, I need the person out of my office. What we're talking about is just moving that pendulum a lot further, probably when the discussion should have started of like, hey, seems like your, last couple of reviews have been okay. Like, is this working for you? You want to do something? And they say, you know what, I kind of want to do something else. So you're earlier in the process. Again, we believe that people take something more serious with an incentive. So we will say, yeah, $2,500 if you can give us 8 weeks notice. That pays for itself in a client service business. And we find, if it's going terribly, we can call it quits. But they have a pretty good incentive to end strong. I've heard all kinds of objections. People will steal stuff, all stuff. If they hate you and they want to steal stuff, they will steal it long before their last 2 weeks, right? I mean, that is the worst argument. Like they've been gutting you from the inside for a year, waiting to whatever. Like that's not the time to do it. So I have a graph of this, but I think the whole difference in this is like usually 2 weeks notice is 6 months later after a conversation that was put aside or not had or otherwise. We're just sort of having that earlier and saying, there's some stuff going on here. Like, is this the job you want? Like, and trying to get it so that we're before it hit the red line. So I mean, out of all the people, we have only really had like one issue with someone who was on a transition where they sent, details aren't important. They just did something that showed very poor judgment. And we decided like, we had to sort of call it quits. But generally, I think, again, if there's this period of mutual respect, the main reason why we're offering that bonus is to show people that we are serious. We said it 100 times. We told people 100 times. We trotted out the case studies of Javon and Tia and Mary and all, and people still don't believe it because their parents are like, don't you do that, you're going to get screwed. So we just felt like, hey, if we're bonusing you on it, then maybe you'll believe that we're actually serious about it and mean it. Yeah. It's really fighting an uphill battle of sort of historical precedent.
You talk about how young people are, talking about salary right away and all that. We couldn't get our daughter to actually even ask how much money she was going to be making at this new first job. Week went by, 2 weeks went by, then 3 weeks went by, and we said, well, did you get a paycheck? No. I think maybe this is an internship and it's really not a job. So she was just afraid because she was new into the workforce, and to even ask a question like that. She's learning. But I think young people now are really kind of bold and learning to be bold nowadays. Javon, I want to ask you a question about the fact that you said you can't hire fast enough. With a culture that is so special that you're always looking to protect and maintain, you're probably going to make some hiring mistakes if you're, get to the point where we've got to hire a bunch of people at the same time and we're competing for talent. So how do you make sure that those that you actually do hire are going to fit the culture that you've built?
Well, everyone on this call right now knows there's no such thing as a perfect hiring process, and you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to make when people come in to interview, let's call it what it is. They're campaigning. They're going to tell you everything they're going to do when they get elected. Then they get elected, and you're like, wait a minute, what happened? You didn't live up to half of it. And so we know mistakes are going to happen, and we want to either coach that person up or coach them out. The one thing we won't do is deviate from the process. We've had Zoom calls where we're like, oh, this person's great. They're willing to relocate to Austin. We should make them an offer now. And we're like, nope, we're not going to skip in person. They come in person and everyone's like, whoo, oh man, we missed what. Great, not bringing that person on. So it's a process for us, and it's long. Our hiring process takes beginning to end about 6 weeks. And so, but that go back to the beginning where I said that we've not lost a lot of people. So I believe one proves the point of the other. But yeah, we won't deviate from it. We will not. Even right now, they wanted to make a few tweaks in there. And, we sat as a team and I'm like, look, you all are looking to make 2 tweaks, one at a time, because if we make 2 and something's not working, we're not going to know which one it is, 1 tweak at a time. So we're protective of the way we hire, and sometimes to the detriment of being able to hire faster, but I will argue to the benefit of not destroying the culture.
Right, takes discipline, takes patience.
Yeah, we have 100% the same thing. We have a thorough process in a fast-moving market. We have lost candidates. We are trying to see how we can be operationally more efficient. Like some of it's scheduling interviewers' time. Can we put it all together in a day? Can we move around some of the pieces? But it's hard again, our process takes a couple weeks and you've got a market that's just, but again, that might not be our person. It is hard in a market that's moving that fast.
Totally.
I think the message is don't sacrifice that process. Hamza.
All right. So a couple of questions here. One is when you talk about supporting people who share openly that they want to leave, who takes on these conversations? So is it HR, coaches, their teams? Who's sort of leading those conversations?
Really try to push it. The PR is at the high level, but it's managers. Like we have these check-ins, like a manager, look, if someone seems unhappy, they're performing poorly, a lot of times we're not digging into the root cause. Like what is this a fixable problem? Is it not a fixable problem? Do you want to be in this? So like good managers their team should be having honest conversations with them. And frankly, one of the things we look at is like, do we have a manager who is constantly getting blindsided? Because if so, they don't seem to have the type of rapport. And one of our core values is embrace relationship with their team. They're telling us that we have the same score system with client. They're telling us that all their teams are green, and they just had 3 people give 2 weeks notice. So that's not a great performance for in the managerial role. Yeah, but we are really trying, as we get bigger, a lot of, again, core value of own it, pushing stuff down. People are like, my team needs a mental health week or this or that. What are we doing? And we're like, what are you doing? Like our culture is, look, our whole culture is, what do you need? We'll give you the tools. Like, have you figured out a rotation for them? Have you set it up? Like, we don't want, that goes both ways. We don't want all this top down playbook stuff. We operate on our values. We operate on some principles. Like we've had some tough conversations with our manager. Like, why don't we do X? Like, why aren't you doing that? You just got promoted. You lead a team. This is part of being a manager. Figure out how to give everyone a day off. That's your job. Like, I think I actually think it's been eye-opening for people. Again, we don't want to be a top-down directive company. Like, look, you're paid to be a manager and lead. Yeah.
Great.
Go ahead.
Scott is in California, and he's wondering if there are any legal implications in calling it quits, just because California is very employee-centric, so there may be some issues there if somebody stays, beyond that time. So just curious about that.
I am not even going to weigh on California employment law. It is best thing you could do is try to not hire people from California. my professional opinion, but I'm going to stay far away from that.
It's 100%. I am with Bob on that one. Now, here is the other side of that. Us being a publishing company, we utilize a lot of writers, and we have writers that live in California. And so we literally had to hire a professional employer organization, a PEO, so we could stay compliant in hiring because it is so—
It changes every month.
Right.
They have some new regulation. Yeah.
Brutal in California. I'm with Bob. I do everything I can not to do business in California, and I want to apologize, but I can't to you. I will not do business.
Our accountant called it Hotel California. You can come, but you can
yes
too. Yeah.
It's wrong how it's just operated, but whole different Zoom call.
Yeah.
There you
But
go.
the weather's nice.
Yeah.
It's funny, Paul. Someone said to me one time, I was going on about the state income tax in California, and they said, "Oh, it's a sunshine tax," and I said, "Man, I'll live in rainy Seattle."
How about the San Francisco city tax, which is based on your revenue and not your profit? I've never heard of that in another place.
All right, we'll leave California alone.
So
there's one.
Go ahead, Hamsa.
There's one more. So that's actually
Yeah.
Hannah, who was going to jump in with our question if she's ready.
Oh, I kind of forget what my question was. Oh, I know. So my co-supervisor's on here with me. And one of the things that we've been doing as a team is doing a lot of coaching around kind of where you are, what's working, what's not working. We're helping write resumes. We are sending jobs to people, but that's in our department. And we have a really high retention rate within our own department and a lot of transparency that's operating there. I'm curious if, especially Javon, if there's any key metrics that you guys look at in terms of how you're approaching, not going to use the word retention, how you're approaching the life cycle that you get to experience with your employees. If there's anything that you're looking at that is possible that we could share kind of company-wide to we're seeing the effect of how this is helping our individual staff members. And I think it's something that could be really wonderful for us to take on as a company. But I'm wondering if there's things that you're in particular looking at that help you measure the success of the initiatives that you've put in place.
We don't have any actual metrics, much like Bob. You've heard Bob mention several times. So I am not a fan of what they call them, quarterly performance reviews, annual performance. I mean, really, if I got to wait a quarter to give you a review on something, so we do 30-day check-ins. The key with us is early and often. We want to know how are things going. And to Bob's point, and this is key. I actually don't believe if you stay in contact with people early and often, they'll tell you what's going on. It'll show. The problem with most organizations is the early and often is not happening, and then they act surprised when this person is not happy or a performance issue is happening. But if you're in contact early and often, and we do 30-day check-ins, every 30 days we meet with everyone in the organization, their direct supports, to define that. We don't have, if you're in leadership, your role is to support. That's it. So you don't have direct reports. You are a direct support. That's it. And so leadership, those direct supports, speak with the tribe members every 30 days. You sit down, how's it going? Anything you want to discuss from, inside work, outside work, how's it going? That's the metric, is making sure that we're having those conversations every 30 days. Direct support start missing those every 30-day check-ins. I got an issue, just like what Bob said, I got an issue with them now, because that's the key, is taking care and supporting the people who are executing on the work.
Yeah, problems have totally different root issues, and they become unrecoverable after a certain amount of time, right? There could be someone coming late to work every day, and they're coming late to work because they lost their childcare and don't want to tell someone. They're interviewing for another job, or they're having health issues, right? Each of those need different not resume. They need different solutions if attacked early. If avoided, it will just lead to a breakdown of trust, no matter what the situation is, that then may be unrecoverable. So as Javon said, again, we really are these check-ins, like, regularly discussion, something going on, let's get to the root of it. Can we fix it? Do we want to fix it? And just deal with that stuff earlier than this path of, you're moving slowly like this, and it's just not recoverable tailspin by the end.
Real fast as well. I know every company is different financially, and we've been talking about mental health. And it's interesting. Mental health in the financial arena, in my opinion, does not get talked about enough. Be it someone wants a salary increase, be it someone's carrying a lot of debt. And I read a statistic, and I'm just sharing a practice that we use. I'm not saying you should implement this, but I read a statistic that said that 45% of Americans don't have a spare $400 cash for an emergency. And what really jumped out to me about that is, I was raised by a single mother on welfare, and that was my mom. And I thought, man, that is sad. And to Bob's point, sometimes things are going on and problems are happening that aren't actually attached to the problem. It's something else. So what we did for the mental health aspect is, I want people to be able to have that peace of mind, is we implemented a $1,500 emergency fund. And what happens is, if someone has an emergency, they can tap the emergency fund, no questions asked, and it's interest-free, $1,500. You don't start paying it back until 60 days. And then we just take $250 from your check going forward. Why that was important to me from a mental health standpoint is, when you're out on the weekend, you're driving, whatever, and you have an emergency, to know that you have that backup, to know that there's something there that mentally, okay, I'm safe. If my car breaks down, my scribe's got me taken care of. Those things are very important in making sure that we serve the tribe members and taking care of that financial mental health as well.
That's a really cool practice. I think the most important practice that you've talked about really is the 30-day check-in, and this idea of just having one-to-ones with our team. And you really have to ask one question, which is, how you doing? And just listen, and you're going to get so much information. I found that in my company to be the number one way we would have well in advance notice of somebody that generally wasn't fulfilled in doing what they're doing, and trying to reduce those surprises down the road. Hamsa, do you have one more?
I think there was one more. Dave, are you still on with us to share real quick?
Yeah, hi everybody. Great conversations. Thank you, Paul, Robert, and Javon. A nice read, interesting, not suggesting you do any of it or all of it, but Menlo Innovations out of Ann Arbor does extreme interviewing. And so if Paul and I want to work at Menlo, we show up at 4 o'clock, they hand us a piece of paper with a case that we have to solve, software development. And so we go in front of Robert and Javon, and they watch the two of us work together for 20 minutes. I get hired when I convince them to hire Paul. My job in the organization is to make your partner look better. Then Paul goes to another group of 2, I go to another group of 2, and an interview with 2 people again. And so in an hour, 6 employees can watch 12 potential employees and how they interact with teamwork. I gave Menlo, I gave Hamsa the link. Interesting.
The link. Yeah, they're a great innovative company. So again, as you guys are hearing, lots of different ways to attack this. Just kind of one final question I'd both like to have you chime in on, which is, where are we going from here? Are we just in this crunch that is as a result of this last 18 months that we've gone through, or have things fundamentally changed going forward? What do you think?
Yeah,
Bob?
yes. I think it's both, actually. I think we are in a short-term crunch that will probably pop and change a little bit, but I think there's been some fundamental systemic long-term change. That stuff that was already underway that has just been advanced 5 or 10 years. And again, if you haven't picked and communicated the model for your workplace going forward, if people aren't sure whether they can come into work or not going to have an office, or it's hybrid, or hybrid to me is actually the most dangerous. I cover this in the book. Is I think Javon said this, like there are 10 different definitions of hybrid that will be different for the company. Like you're coming in 50% of the time, you're coming in whenever you want, or you're coming in on Mondays and Fridays. So I think that if you're not in tune to, the fact that people are looking for a lot more flexibility, you're going to be really constrained in your supply of candidates. So we shouldn't conflate, again, what's the, there's a near term just complete imbalance in the marketplace, but I think there's some long-term secular changes.
Okay.
I agree with everything Bob said. Nothing to add there. I will say this part. What I don't want to see go away, and if you just give me 30 seconds when I say this, I very much, I enjoy watching what's going on with diversity right now and the actions that are being taken. And so I'm going to share this with you that I ask that each of you take away, because this is very simple to implement. So I'm going to share a quick story with you. Bob knows me as JT. The reason Bob knows me as JT, in my early 20s, I was trying to start my career. I was trying to get on people's calendars, and I could not get on someone's calendar. One guy, white guy, got on the phone with me and he said, "Hey, how did you get a Black first name, Javon, and an Irish last name, McCormick?" Well, first of all, I didn't know my last name was Irish, so I was just elated to find that out. And so I thought that was the coolest thing. But then I hung up and I realized, oh, Javon, that's what they're seeing. So my full name is Javon Thomas McCormick. Early 20s, I made the decision, I'm going to start going by JT McCormick. The next week, calendar filled up, got all kinds of appointments. Fast forward, George Floyd murder happened, and I saw all kinds of just shallow virtue signaling, blackout on social media. I mean, what does that do to move the needle? We're arguing about a syrup bottle. What does that do to move the needle? But then I read a piece, and it said that there were 3 Fortune 500 Black CEOs. So I looked their names up, and they are Marvin Ellison, Kenneth Frazier, and Roger Ferguson. And as a bonus, the wealthiest Black man in America is named Robert Smith. 4 very ethnic free names. And I looked and I said to myself, okay, wait a minute. I'm not a Fortune 500 CEO, but I've become CEO, and I've done a few things, and we've done some things in culture. And I said, I'm going to start going by Javon. And I didn't do it for me. I built my name in my career by JT. I did it for every kid that's named Martavius, Rayvante, LaQuanda, Lucretia, who has sent in a resume and just got passed over and couldn't even get the interview. So my ask of each of you, you don't have to hire them, but give Rayvante an interview, give LaQuanda an interview, because what's happening right now is they can't even get an interview, a swing, a shot to get better at their interview performance, because no one will even give them a chance because the name on the damn resume. So here's the extra bonus. You never know. You may end up hiring a Javon that only has a GED, that has scaled a software company, a publishing company, and made a lot of money in the stock market. So give Rayvante, Martavius, and LaQuanda a chance. Don't let diversity go by the wayside and be something that was a hot topic for the moment. Keep that top of mind.
Awesome. Thank you, Javon. Great message to end on. Again, Bob and Javon, thank you so much for joining us. Just tremendous best practices. But there's a lot of wisdom in the room. And so we're going to allow you guys to go into a breakout now into smaller groups and share with each other some of the things that you're doing. If somebody wants to chime in with a particular challenge, maybe you can help each other solve that. But again, Javon, Bob, thank you so much for being with us, sharing with us today. And I'm going to turn it back over to Hamza so you guys can go into the breakout groups. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.